2, 1.
Good evening, friends. It is lovely to be at the Cliff Hotel again with you. I've been here all summer. The only difference tonight, of course, driving over the mountain, we're driving in the pitch dark. During the summertime, the sun, as I got to the cliff and we looked out through these beautiful windows, it was the most wonderful sunset. But still, you know, we're going into the winter time now. Well, tonight I brought a little friend with me. And his name is Hooter. Now one day I was practicing a poem and a friend of mine came to see me. And she makes the most beautiful teddy bears and soft toys. And she listened to the poem I was rehearsing. And the next time she came to see me, she brought me this beautiful owl. So now I use Hooter when I'm doing this poem. So I'll just pop him back on his perch. And it's called The Owl Critic. Who stuffed that brown owl? No one spoke in the shop. The barber was busy and he couldn't stop. The customers waiting their turn were all reading the Daily, the Herald, the Post, little heeding the young man that blurted out such a blunt question. No one raised a head or even made a suggestion, and the barber kept on shaving. Don't you see, Mr. Brown, how wrong the whole thing is, how jammed down the neck is, how flattened the head is? In fact, the whole owl, what an ignorant wreck 'tis. I make no apologies. I've studied owliology. I've spent days and nights in 100 collections and cannot be blinded to any defections arising from unskillful fingers that fail to stuff a bird right, from his beak to his tail. Do take that bird down, have him stuffed again brown. And the barber kept on shaving. I've studied owls and other night fowl, and what I tell you I know to be true. No owl in this world ever had his claws curled, ever had his neck screwed into that attitude. He can't do it. 'Tis against all bird law. Anatomy preaches, ornithology teaches. An owl has a toe that cannot turn so. Examine those eyes. I'm filled with surprise. Taxidermists have passed off on you such poor glass. It would make Audubon scream and John Burroughs laugh to encounter such chaff. Do take that bird down, or you'll be the laughing stock all over the town. And the barber kept on shaving. With some sawdust and bark I could stuff in the dark an owl better than that. I could make an old hat look more like an owl than that horrid fowl, stuck up there so stiff, like a side of coarse leather. In fact, about him, there's not one natural feather. Just then, with a wink and a sly normal lurch, the owl very gravely got down from his perch, walked round and regarded his fault-finding critics, who thought he was stuffed, with a glance analytic, and then fairly hooted as if he should say, "Your learning's at fault this time anyway. I'm an owl, you're another, so critic, good day." And the barber kept on shaving. Thank you. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in a little village called Hazelbeach on the Milford Haven estuary. My father was a milkman and my mum was a seamstress. And in those days, in the 50s, chapels and churches were, well, very popular. They were full, weren't they? Everybody went to chapel and church. And my father used to say, you have to be able to do a turn. If she can't get up and do a turn, then she's no good. Well, from a young age, I think my mother realised I was never going to make an opera singer. So she put me to learn poetry. I went to this lady in the village, Mrs. Rees. She seemed ancient then because I was very, very young. And the first poem she taught me was, "I love little pussy, his coat is so warm, and if I don't hurt him, he'll do me no harm. He'll sit by the fire to keep himself warm." So I must have been very young when I first started to learn with her. And Mrs. Rees, she was quite a character in the village. In the little mission hall we went to, she played the piano. And of course she recited beautifully. And the last poem I ever remember her saying was this one. The Old Violin. 'Twas battered and scarred, and the auctioneer thought it not worthwhile to spend much time on the old violin, so he held it up with a smile. "What am I bid, good folks?" said he. "Who'll start the bidding for me?" "A guinea I'm bid, a guinea I'm bid. Will anyone make it 2? Yes, 2 guineas I have. Did anyone say 3? Going for 3, said he. But no, from a place far back in the room, a grey-haired old man came forward, and wiping the dust from the old violin and tightening up a loose string, he played a melody so sweet and pure you'd think the angels would sing. And many an eye grew moist as the tune fell, notes now fast, now slow, made them think of home, of family and friends. With memories sweet, their hearts were torn. The music ceased, and the auctioneer, in a voice now quiet and low, said, "What am I bid for the old violin?" And he held it up with a bow. 1,000 guineas, 1,000 guineas. Will anyone make it 2? Yes, 2,000 guineas I'm bid. 2,000 once, 2,000 twice. Going now gone. The crowd all cheered, and someone said, "What changed its worth? We do not quite understand." Swift came the reply, without a doubt, "It's the touch of the master's hand." And many a man with life out of tune and battered and scarred by sin is auctioned cheap to the thoughtless crowd, much like the old violin. A mess of pottage, a glass of wine, a game, and he travels on. He's going once, he's going twice, he's going and almost gone. Then the master comes, and the foolish crowd can never quite understand the worth of a soul and the change that is made by the touch of the master's hand. Thank you.
I love that one.
So we're in now the 1970s, and I got married and I had 3 sons, or I've got 3 sons, and at that time my father came to live with me. I'd lost my mother when I was quite young, and my father wasn't very well, so he came to live with me. And you know, he adored my sons, and he was always doing things, always up to mischief, making things for them. And this particular time he decided to dam a little valley. And he got a JCB in, and he was going to make a pond, but he made more like a lake than a pond. I can tell you it was huge. It was very nice, and you could walk all around it. So this particular day, he was going to teach the boys now. He had an old water tank, and he was going to show them that you could go to the centre of the pond in this old water tank. Well, if you've ever seen a square thing in water, and he had a big stick, he must have cut a big stick from the hedge, and he got into this thing, and I think he thought he was in Venice or somewhere, so he's pushing himself out now to the centre of the pond, and all of a sudden the tank went over, and suddenly he was underneath. Well, we thought he might be trapped in the tank. And I said to somebody, "Quick, go and get a camera." So somebody ran into the house and brought a camera out, and we took a picture of him crawling out of the pond, and he was just like a drowned rat. Well, I found a very nice little poem the other day, and I'm going to read it to you. Daddy fell into the pond. Daddy fell into the pond. Everyone grumbled, the sky was grey. We had nothing to do and nothing to say. We were nearing the end of a dismal day, and there seemed to be nothing beyond. Then Daddy fell into the pond, and everyone's face grew merry and bright, and Timothy danced for sheer delight. "Give me the camera, quick, oh quick. He's calling out to the duckweed, click." Then the gardener suddenly slapped his knee and doubled up, shaking silently. And the ducks all quacked as if they were daft, and it sounded as if the old drake laughed. Oh, there wasn't a thing that didn't respond when Daddy fell into the pond. Thank you. But seeing as we're in the 1970s, my favourite poet at that time, of course, was Pam Ayres. And she brought humour into every home. She wrote about natural things, everyday things. And, well, I was a big fan of hers. And she would do something like this. "I'm a starling, me darling." We're starlings, the missus, myself and the boys. We don't go in for hopping, we walks. We don't go in for those fashionable clothes like old Mrs. Thrush and his spots. Me breast isn't red, there's no crest on me head. We've got kind of hard-wearing dots. Now we starlings, the missus, myself and the boys, we'll eat anything that's about. Well, anything but that old half coconut. I can't hold it still, I falls out. What we'd much rather do is wait here for you to put out some crumbs for the tits. And then, when we're certain you're there by the curtain, we swoops down and tears them to bits. Now we starlings, the missus, myself and the boys, we reckon that we're being got at. You think for 2 minutes, those finches and linnets, you don't see them being shot at. So next time you come out to put the crumbs out, and you see some starlings making a noise, don't you be so quick to heave half a brick. It's the missus, myself and the boys. Thank you. Now the next one, I'm sure you're all a lot more familiar with. It's very, very popular. I think, well, I wish I looked after my teeth is very popular, but this is also one that a lot of people know. The battery hen. Oh, I am a battery hen. On me back there's not a germ. I never scratched a farmyard and I never pecked a worm. I never had the sunshine to warm me feathers through. Eggs I lay every day for the likes of you. Next time you have them scrambled or piled upon your plate, it's me that you should thank for that. I never lays them late. I always lays them regular. I always lays them right. I never lays them brown. I always lays them white. Now it's no life for a battery hen. In me box I'm sat. A funnel stuck out from the side. Me pellets come down that. I get a squirt of water every half a day, watching with me beady eyes me eggs roll away. They roll off down the tubing and up the gangway quick. Sometimes I get to thinking that might have been a chick. I might have been a farmyard hen basking in the sun. There might have been a crowd of chicks after me to run. There might have been a cockerel fine to pay us his respects, instead of sitting here waiting till someone comes to wring our necks. The time and motion clock is saying nearly noon. I expect me squirt of water will come flying at me soon. And then me spray of pellets will nearly break me leg, and I'll bite the wire netting and lay one more bloody egg. Thank you. Well, during the 70s, I opened a guest house, and I was doing very nice, lots of reps and different people coming to stay. And then I had a call from the hospital. Would I take an elderly gentleman? He was a friend of my father's and he didn't want to go home and he didn't want to go anywhere else, so could he come to stay with me for a fortnight? Well, he was about 80 years of age at the time and he didn't go home. He died with me at the age of 94. So that was the start of my journey with elderly people. And then the hospital rang and they said, could you take another one and another one? And so it went on, and I ended up then with a residential home. And it was very nice, I really enjoyed it. But at that time, I joined an old-time music hall group. And we used to go out and perform 2 hours of music hall for charity. We never took any money for it, we raised so much money for charity. And that group actually went on for 44 years, and it only finished this last March because, well, the pianist was 82 and some of the dancers on stage were well in their 70s, and they decided that, the time would come when they would stop. Well, I used to do monologues for the Old Town Music Hall, and this is the sort of thing that I would do. I loved at that time Joyce Grenville, and this is what she would do. She would take an old cardigan and she would just pop it on, just give it a bit of a button in the front, and then she would take a hat a bit similar to the one I've got here and she would just pop it on her head, and suddenly she was a different character. And tonight I'm going to be Mrs. Moss. And I'm going to invite you to Mrs. Moss's cottage. And Mrs. Ingstone is in the cottage as well. And the poem is entitled A Terrible Warrior. Normally, I'll just tell you this, normally I sit down for this, but if I sit you won't see me at the back, because if I'm on stage you can sit. So, A Terrible Warrior. There he is, Mrs. Ingstone. That's his car. I'd know it anywhere. Oh, it is good of him to come round so soon. Will you let him in? I know it's my cottage, but you're nearer the door, and I feel funny. Oh, there you are, Mr. Moulder. Do come in. Now, where will you sit? Will you sit on the settee? I think it's nice for a big man. Oh, don't sit on Kipper, you silly old pussycat. Go and sit up on the windowsill. He likes to sit on the windowsill and purr through the geraniums. Mr. Moulder, 'tis good of you to come round from your lawyer's office. I've been so worried. I told you, didn't I? I've been so worried. Well, I'll tell you what happened. The other evening, I was sitting in here. Oh, no, wait a minute, I've got to stop a minute. I'll tell you what happened. The thing is, I've done a wrong thing. Well, we don't know how wrong, do we yet? The other evening, I was sitting in here, and 2 young people came round, selling tickets for a raffle, and I took 2. Oh, that's not the wrong thing I've done. Oh dear, I've done 2. Well, a raffle is gambling, isn't it? And I don't like the idea of gambling. Oh, I don't mind a game of hoopla at the Garden Fete and that. But I mean, a raffle is proper gambling. But oh, the prizes were lovely. First prize was a cruise for 2 to Madeira, there and back. And the second prize was a cocktail cabinet with all beautiful crystal goblets. And there were littler prizes too, a brace of pheasants and a rabbit and boxes of this and that, and all for 10 UP. I told Mrs. Ingstone, didn't I, next door, the next day, and she said, mind you win that cruise for 2 and I'll go with you. We had a good laugh. But then I started to worry. Well, I might win, mightn't I? No, I would not like to go on a cruise. Well, a cruise is on the sea, isn't it? Oh, I don't mind looking at it from the side, but I wouldn't want to be on it. Well, there might be a storm, and would there be enough life jackets to go around? And would they expect me to undress at night? And what am I supposed to do with my dentures? Oh, I did worry. And then I worried about this cottage. Well, it's a council cottage, you know. And they might put up the rent or the rates. I mean, they wouldn't know I hadn't paid for it. I'm not going to vote for them next time, whoever they are. Well, the day came for the bazaar where they were going to hold the raffle. And I asked Mrs. Ingstone to go with me, but you couldn't, could you? She was going to the WI to a lecture on hormones with her niece. But you didn't like it, did you? Well, they're not nice things, hormones. But did you know we're all supposed to have them? I don't think I've got any. Well, I thought to myself, I'll just pop off on the bus and I'll pop into the town hall, I'll see them draw the raffle and pop off home again. But as I get to the door of the town hall, there's that Mrs. Abercrombie, or whatever she calls herself, that lively little woman with the short legs. She goes to St. Luke's. She spots me and she says, oh, it's one of our old age pensioners from the club. Do let her in half price. Well, you don't mind the half price, do you? But you don't like the attention being drawn. Still, I got a nice seat up by the platform where I could see it all going on. And this woman came on to do the draw. She made a big palaver, muddling up all the little tickety bits in a container. And she put in her hand. I thought to myself, get on with it. She made her selection. She took ages undoing the ticket. First prize, a cruise for 2 to Madeira, Lady Clutton Taylor. Lady Clutton Taylor? She can afford to go on a cruise any day of the week. Nobody much clapped. I was disappointed and relieved at one and the same time. And I was just bending down to pick myself up when I heard my name called. Mrs. Moss, 2 Alma Cottages, Bull Lane, a lovely rabbit. Well, I looked up at the platform and there was a woman standing there with a rabbit in her hand. Still, just sit here numb. And that Mrs. Abercrombie. Bravo! Well, I had to take myself up from the body of the hall onto the platform to receive the said rabbit. And as this woman is putting it into a bag for me to take off home, I could see it had still got its eyes open. Oh no, I did not want a rabbit. Well, you have to do a rabbit. Mark you, I've never done a rabbit. Mark you, I've seen many a rabbit done. My mother must have done 12 a year if she did a dozen. And you'd be surprised what goes on under all that fur. Well, I'm on the bus now, and I'm worrying all the time, how am I going to get rid of this blessed rabbit? I couldn't leave it on the bus because some nosy Parker would come running at you. Oh, you've left your rabbit on the bus. And I couldn't put it in my dustbin because they'd emptied it that day, and you know what they are, once a week if that. Well, I'm walking up Queen's Hill now, and I see a little red car parked like up against the curb. And its window was open about 6 inches. And before I'd known what I'd done, I posted that rabbit. And as I'd done so, there's a young man walking down the hill and he says, good evening to me. So I say, good evening back. So I know he's seen me do it. I went off home, I couldn't sleep a wink. I got up the next morning, went down, car was gone. Mr. Mulder, that's the wrong thing I'd done in posting that rabbit. And what I need to know is it an abuse of personal private property? And can anyone inform against? You don't think, Wee's over here, you don't think so? Oh, but are you sure? Oh, that's a relief then. You won't have to come and visit me in Dartmoor. No, Mr. Mulder, don't get up. I'll just go and put the kettle on and make a nice cup of tea. Come on, Kipper. He's an old boy now, you know, and he's got to go out quite often. Come on, Kipper, come on out with me then. Thank you. You're clapping now.
Very good.
They're all asleep now.
Well, I always encouraged my sons to perform as well. Like my father would say to me with his grandchildren, those boys got to get up and do a turn. And all my boys can get on the stage and do a turn. In fact, my youngest son Matthew would have been here tonight with me because we've done this little gig every week together. But unfortunately, or fortunately for him, he's on a cruise ship now in Australia. So I'm holding the fort for him. I told you about I had a residential home. Well, eventually I went into the nursing home business, and on the way I hit a bump in the road and I had to bring the nursing home to an end. I was advised to go and live in Spain because it was a thing to do with security with the banks, and I was eventually going to go to court. So I went to Spain and my life changed completely. I had to find a new way to cope. This next poem is a very good poem for keeping you strong. And it's called If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt but make allowance for their doubting too, or being lied about, don't dealing lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good or talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or see the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can walk with kings and keep your virtue, or talk with crowds nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth, and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Thank you. After 5 years of living in Spain, I came home and started my life all over again. But at that time, this tape was playing in my head. It was all the experiences that I had been through and all the new things that I had seen and learned while I was in Spain, and how I had overcome negative things. I learned to turn my life around by being positive. And at that time, I turned it into a book. I just sat down in the evening, and all the stuff that was going through my head, it was like I dictated it. I just sat and I wrote it all down. It took a long time to find a publisher, but eventually I did. And in Lolva, our biggest Welsh publishers, they published the book. Now, I haven't brought the book here because I want to sell it to you. I brought the book here because it's part of my journey. But when I was here the other week, I showed the book to the guests that were here. And afterwards, 2 ladies came up to me and they said, "Could you tell us how much your book is?" Because I didn't tell anybody what the price was or anything. I wasn't here to sell the book. "Could you tell us how much your book is?" So I told them. And they said, "We have been through a really bad time lately. Both of us and our husbands have been made redundant from a big company." And she said, "I'm 60 years of age and I just feel my life is over. I don't know what I'm going to do from here on in." And she said, "Seeing you tonight and listening to what you've said, you have inspired me to go and do something else with my life." And they actually bought a copy of the book, but that is not the reason that I brought the book with me tonight. I continued with the Old Time Music Hall, and for this next poem, I'm going to dress up a little bit. So I'll just take this cardigan off now and put something different on. And I'm sure you've all seen the old dust carts going around. And they put mascots on the front, like an old teddy bear or a horseshoe. Well, tonight I'm going to be the dolly on the dust cart. I'm the dolly on the dust cart. I can see you're not impressed. I'm fixed above the driver's cab with wire across me chest. The dustman, see, he spotted me going in the grinder, so he fixed me on the lorry. Well, he thought it would be kinder. This used to be a lovely frock in pink and pretty shades, but it's torn now and black as the ace of spades. There's dirt across me face and all around me rosy cheeks. I've had me head held back, but we ain't had no rain for weeks. I used to be a mamma doll. Tip forward, I'd say ma'am. But the rain's got in me squeaker, and now I've been struck dumb. I had 2 lovely blue eyes, but in the wind and weather, one's gone up inside me head and one's gone altogether. I'm not one of those soft, flesh-coloured dollies modern children love so much. I'm one of those hard old dollies that is very cold to touch. Modern dollies' underwear leave me a bit nonplussed. Well, I haven't got a bra, but then I haven't got a bust. Oh, I was happy in that doll's house, as happy as could be. I never realised that Tiny Tears was coming on the scene. Oh, I'd heard about dolls with hair that grew, and I was quite enthralled, until I realised my head was hard and pink and bald. Now I travels with the rubbish, out of fashion, out of style, out of me environment, from mile after mile, no longer prized, dustbinised, unfeminine, untidy. I'm the dolly on the dust cart. There'll be no collection Friday. Thank you. going to strip this off. Well, I talked to you about those ladies who felt that their life was they'd hit a bump in the road and they didn't know what to do. But when I got to 60, somebody said to me, oh, when you get to 60, it's all downhill from there. Well, I was determined to try not to let my life go downhill at 60. So what I did, you're probably wondering what this wonderful painting is doing here of the Preseli Mountain. That's the mountain that my son and I have crossed every week to come up to you. He actually took that photograph, and I put the sheep in, and I put a very naughty fox doing a leapfrog over one of the sheep. But that's what I started to do when I was 60. When I was at school, I was quite good at art. I did no level art, and then my teacher wanted me to do A-level. But I was doing cookery and needlework, and I thought, no, I haven't got time, because you have to do a great portfolio of work for A-level. So I said, no, I'm not doing it. But all my life I hankered after painting. What if I had gone down that road? But when I got to 60, it was coming up again inside me, and I thought, right, I took up a paintbrush, and I bought a canvas, and I bought some paint. And I've painted every week, practically every day, but every week since. And I'm loving it. And it's opened new doors, I've met new people. I'm never bored because, you know, if you're at home, it's a rainy day, you just get a canvas out and you paint. So I want to encourage you all that if you wake up in the morning and you're still alive, get out there and do something. Don't give up. There's loads of things that you can do. Whatever this thing is inside you that you love yourself, get up and do it. Now for my last piece tonight, I'm going to do another monologue for you, and it's called Flower Alley. I was thinking today of something that happened years ago when we lived at Flower Alley, though it hadn't a flower to show. Many might think it a trifle. 'Tis but a trifle, and yet it's something that I shall never forget. At the end of Flower Alley there lived a poor old man. Guffy the children called him. He was as thin as a frying pan, thin, shrivelled and shaky, and as poor as the poorest mouse. And he lived all alone in the garret at the top of a lodging house. No one knew where he came from, and no one knew where he'd been. He hadn't a relative that anyone had seen. He used to sell nuts and apples under the station wall, for that was about the distance the poor old chap could crawl. Once he came and sat on my doorstep, and I took him a cup of tea. And after those beginnings, he'd pop in occasionally. He loved to talk with the children, and I loved to listen too. For bless him, he knew his Bible and read it through and through. He'd sit and preach a sermon, a splendid text and all. He might have been a bishop, a-preaching in St. Paul's. Then he'd pick up his basket. Good night, my dear, he'd say. God bless you for your kindness. And slowly walk away. One night, 'twas in the winter, Jim came in late for his tea. Annie, the fog is dreadful. It's as black as your hat, you see. I've been leading poor old Guffy. He couldn't find his door. And it strikes me in such weather, he won't last out much more. I was grieved to hear Jim say so, and a thought came quick as light. I'll go and see him before supper time tonight. And as our hens are laying, I'll take him some eggs, says I. A nice fresh egg for breakfast is what he might like to try. But Jim got a reading the paper, and I got a listening too. And by the time he'd finished, it was too late for me to go. And the next day, it was Friday. I was busy as could be. Jim comes home early on Saturday and likes to find me free, so I do my cleaning on Friday. I was almost rushed off my legs, and I never gave a minute to Guffy and the eggs. But early on Saturday morning, I thought about the poor old man and how he might be. Quickly that morning comes back to me. The clouds had gone and sunbeams were dancing overhead. But as I reached the lodgings, I heard that he was dead. Dead. He had died on Friday, alone, without a friend, without a neighbour near him to help him at his end. I who had lived so handy, he never then knew the thoughts I had about him, the kindness I meant to do. There were the eggs in my basket, too late to do him good. I know I stood on that doorstep like a stone or a piece of wood while the neighbours gossiped around me. I really had nothing to say, except that I was sorry, and slowly walked away. So friends, in this world of hurry, of work and sudden end, if a thought comes quickly to you of doing a kindness to a friend, do it that blessed minute. Don't wait or hesitate. For it's no use intending to do a kindness if you do it a day too late. Thank you, and I'd like to thank you all for coming. I hope you've taken something from some of the poems, and have a really nice day tomorrow. I don't know where you're going tomorrow, but you'll be out in the bus somewhere. And I hope you bring lovely memories of Wales back to your home with you. So thank you very much. If you like me, please tell reception I'm Phyllis. If you didn't, it's Jane. Thank you.